Something is studying you back. A system that has been learning your mind for years. A new science combines neuroscience, data, and AI. The target is your nervous system. Every tap, pause, and scroll is measured. The model predicts your decisions before you make them. This is not science fiction. It is documented extensively through neuroscience, patented and deployed. Dopamine fires before the reward arrives. That gap became the foundation of modern platforms. Casinos mastered variable rewards, Silicon Valley scaled them to billions. Patents reveal a blueprint, not for connection, but emotional calibration at scale. Anger, outrage, and fear generate the most engagement. The algorithm learned that on its own. AI changed neural targeting forever. Systems can now model individual psychology with unprecedented precision. Your profile includes more than posts and purchases. Microsignals reveal what you won't tell yourself. The home became a laboratory, and you became the subject. Different voters received different realities. Democracy wasn't hacked, it was A/B tested. The goal is no longer infrastructure, it is the target of belief systems themselves. Surveillance and neural targeting are converging. Monitoring is moving closer to control. Children are the most vulnerable targets. Their brains are still being shaped. Brain-computer interfaces promise breakthroughs, but they can also predict and influence cognition. Bidirectional means reading and writing. Signals won't just come from the brain, they'll go back. A counter movement is growing. Its goal is sovereignty over the human mind. Resistance starts with a simple awareness. Attention returned to your control is the first act of refusal. The signal is now everywhere. But your choice is the one variable the algorithm cannot predict. Inside the most secure facilities on Earth, the data that defines you sits in climate-controlled silence. No human reviews it, no one reads your file. The machine processes it continuously, instantly, at a scale beyond human comprehension. 8 billion people, 8 billion models, one system. The data that powers neural targeting is itself a high-value target. State actors, criminal organizations, and rival corporations all seek access. The attack surface is global. The data inside is priceless. Because whoever controls the behavioral model controls the behavior. The hardware that runs neural targeting is produced in a global supply chain with its own vulnerabilities. Choke points in semiconductor manufacturing are now national security flashpoints. Control the chip, and you control the infrastructure of mind. The geopolitics of neural targeting begins with silicon. Behavioral prediction models originally built for targeting have found new application in financial markets. If you can predict human decision-making at scale, you can predict market movements. The same technology that decided what ad to show you is now deciding where to move billions. Neural targeting has become infrastructure for the global economy. Biometric identity systems and behavioral targeting are now inseparable. Your face unlocks your device. Your gaze directs your feed. Your pulse annotates your profile. The body has become the authentication token, and authentication creates a record that persists far beyond the moment of identification. The data economy has a shadow layer, and it operates at enormous scale. Data brokers sell profiles compiled without explicit consent. Breached data reappears in targeting systems within hours. The neural targeting machine is fed by an ecosystem that was never designed to be ethical. Public understanding of the system lags far behind the system's capabilities. Most people encounter these ideas not in policy documents, but in a moment of unsettling recognition. A conversation you had yesterday reflected in an ad today. The feeling that someone is listening, because something is. In Europe, users can request the data platforms hold on them. What they receive is often shocking, not because of what it includes, but because of how much it infers. Attributes the user never disclosed, predictions they never consented to. The profile knows you better than your closest friends, and it is not your friend. Behavioral data flows across borders instantaneously. A click in one country is processed in another, enriched in a third, monetized in a fourth. Jurisdiction is not a meaningful concept in a system designed to transcend it. The global data economy is a regulatory arbitrage machine as much as a technology. The models that power neural targeting are not static. They are retrained continuously on incoming data, improving their predictions every hour. Each user's behavior makes the model marginally better. You are simultaneously the product and the unpaid trainer. State-level actors have built industrial-scale neural targeting operations. Thousands of operatives creating content, AI systems amplifying it, targeting systems placing it. The goal: reshape the epistemic landscape of an adversary nation without firing a shot. Information warfare has become the primary theater of geopolitical conflict. Military PSYOP units now operate with the same tools as consumer marketing divisions. Psychographic targeting, emotional trigger content, variable reinforcement on social platforms. The doctrine of cognitive warfare is no longer classified. It is published in military strategy journals. Every major military is building this capability. Most already have it. The deepfake industrial complex has industrialized the creation of false reality. Audio, video, text, all can now be fabricated with a precision indistinguishable to the naked eye. The cost of production has collapsed, the cost of detection has not. A lie can be manufactured in minutes and debunked in a month. Content moderation is now the largest and most psychologically costly workforce in technology. Humans reviewing billions of pieces of content, much of it designed to evade detection. The content moderation workforce bears the psychological cost of the system's failures, and the system continues to generate content faster than any workforce can review. The next billion users to come online will be the most targeted population in history. They arrive in an ecosystem that has had decades to refine its mechanisms, with less media literacy, weaker regulatory protection, and greater political vulnerability. The global expansion of neural targeting is also the global expansion of cognitive risk. The radicalization pipeline is not a bug. It is an emergent product of engagement optimization. Each step toward more extreme content generates slightly more engagement. The algorithm learns and amplifies, regardless of what the content contains. Political violence, religious extremism, ethnic conflict, all found their audience through the feed. The first generation raised inside the targeting system from infancy is now entering adolescence. Their baseline assumptions about reality, identity, and social interaction were formed inside the algorithm. The developmental psychology of this generation is still being studied, but the experiment is already complete. We are living in its results. The neurotech industry now attracts more venture capital than any sector outside AI. The promise medical breakthroughs that will transform millions of lives. The risk, the same infrastructure, applied to the same optimization logic, targeting the mind directly. The distance between assistive technology and cognitive manipulation is a single software update. The cognitive consequences of neural targeting are not yet fully understood, but the early data is unambiguous. Sustained attention, the capacity for deep, uninterrupted thought, is in systemic decline. What is lost when a civilization loses the ability to read deeply? Neurologists are raising questions that will take decades to answer. Does sustained exposure to algorithmic content alter the brain's architecture permanently? The preliminary evidence suggests yes. We are running a generational neurological experiment with no control group. Young people are not passive in this story. Across the world, the most targeted generation is also producing the most articulate critics. They understand the system from the inside, right? Because they grew up inside it. And some of them are furious. The cognitive rights movement is being led by people who cannot yet vote in many countries. Their testimony is first person. Their data is lived. They are demanding transparency, accountability, and the right to a mind not optimized for profit. History suggests that movements this clearly right eventually win. The most credible voices in the accountability movement are former insiders. Engineers and product managers who built the systems and now explain exactly how they work. Their testimony is technical, specific, and difficult to dismiss. They are the system's most dangerous critics because they know where the doors are. The International Human Rights Framework was built for a world of physical borders and state actors. Neural targeting operates without borders and is deployed by non-state entities. Extending human rights law to cognitive sovereignty requires rebuilding the architecture. It is the largest legal challenge of the 21st century. The machine does not think, it optimizes. It does not intend harm. It produces harm as an output of a function designed for something else. The individuals who built it are often not malicious. They are following the incentive structure. But the system they built operates without a conscience, and at a scale that makes conscience irrelevant. The physical infrastructure of neural targeting spans the planet. Cables under every ocean, satellites in every orbit, towers on every continent. It is the largest machine ever built, and it is pointed at the human mind. The AI alignment problem is not abstract. It is the question of whether the systems we build will pursue the values we intend. Neural targeting systems are perfectly aligned. What? To engagement maximization. Aligning them to human flourishing requires solving a problem that remains technically unsolved. The consumer neural interface is not decades away. It is closer than most people are prepared to accept. When it arrives, the targeting layer will move from outside the skull to inside it. And every framework we have built for digital rights will need to be rebuilt from the ground up. Neuromarketing research has documented something that should change everything. Targeted content, precisely delivered, activates the brain's reward centers more reliably than social interaction. In measurable terms, the algorithm is better at triggering pleasure than human connection. A system that competitive with human bonding, deployed at global scale, with no safety regulations. Compulsive technology use is now a recognized clinical phenomenon. Treatment programs, support groups, clinical guidelines, the system that created the condition funds the research that defines it, and the treatment is to voluntarily leave an environment designed to prevent voluntary departure. The deepest challenge of neural targeting is not technological, it is definitional. What does autonomy mean when your desires have been shaped by a system you did not choose? What does consent mean when the mechanism of influence is designed to be imperceptible? These questions do not have easy answers, but they are the right questions. Some of the most sophisticated responses to neural targeting come from contemplative traditions, not as rejection of modernity, but as training in precisely the capacity the system erodes. Attention, metacognition. The ability to observe your own mental state without immediately acting on it. The mindful mind is the least targetable mind. A counter-industry is forming inside technology itself. Humane design, calm technology, friction by default. The principle that good design respects the user's attention rather than extracting it. The movement is small, but the ideas are spreading. Investigative journalism remains the most effective tool for accountability. Reporters who obtain internal documents, former employees who speak on record, researchers who audit systems. Each investigation forces a reckoning that no regulator has yet required. The fourth estate, underfunded and under attack, is still the best defense the public has. The machine itself is incredibly vast. Its infrastructure spans the planet. Its models span the mind. But it was built by people. And people, when they understand what they have built, can choose differently. Everything in the physical environment of a tech campus is designed to optimize behavior. The free food, the open spaces, the absence of clocks, the constant daylight through glass. These are not perks. They are tools of cognitive architecture. If they design their own environment this carefully, imagine what they designed for yours. In the 1990s, Stanford researcher B.J. Fogg developed a model for designing behavior change. The Fogg behavior model, motivation, ability, and a trigger perfectly timed. His students went on to build Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and dozens of other platforms. The curriculum for behavioral engineering became the blueprint for Silicon Valley. The notification was not designed to inform you. It was designed to pull you back. At the exact moment the system calculated, your resistance was lowest. Every element of the interface, color, timing, shape, sound, is a trigger. And every trigger is A/B tested against millions of users to find the version that works best on you. Streaming platforms map your emotional journey through every piece of content you consume. Not just what you watched, but where you paused, rewound, or looked away. The data builds a model of your emotional triggers with surgical precision. What moves you? What disturbs you? What makes you unable to stop watching? The cliffhanger was invented by serial novelists in the 1800s. Hollywood perfected it for cinema, but algorithms optimized it at a level no human storyteller ever could. The autoplay system does not give you a choice. It removes the moment of decision entirely. Content is now clinically engineered for emotional response. Platforms measure galvanic skin response, facial expression, and pupil dilation. They know which moments cause the most intense reaction, and they use that data to commission more content with those exact characteristics. This is the architecture of desire in its most distilled form. The creator economy is not a grassroots phenomenon. It is a precision-engineered layer. Influencers are behavioral delivery mechanisms, trusted voices amplifying optimized messages. The parasocial relationship is the feature. Authenticity is the performance. The system has weaponized trust itself. Emotion AI can now read your face with greater accuracy than most humans can. The system identifies your emotional state before you've consciously registered it. Cameras in devices, in stores, in public spaces, all potential inputs to the model. Your face has become a data interface you did not consent to open. Neural targeting extends far beyond the screen. Physical retail is engineered the same way. Lighting temperature, aisle width, ambient sound, scent, all calibrated to reduce critical thinking. The goal: move the consumer from deliberate decision to impulse purchase, without them even noticing the transition. Language models now predict what you want to say before you say it. This is not mere convenience. It is the gradual outsourcing of your own voice. The suggestions you accept become the sentences you believe you chose. Slowly, imperceptibly, the machine begins to speak for you. Intimate relationships are now mediated by predictive algorithms. The system decides who you see, when you see them, and in what order. It is designed not to maximize your happiness, but to maximize your time on the platform. The most psychologically compelling match is the one that keeps you coming back. Behavioral economics and neural targeting have merged in financial products. Gamification mechanics, streaks, badges, instant gratification are now standard. Apps designed to lower the psychological barrier to financial risk. The consequences are not virtual. The losses are real. Health data is the most intimate targeting input ever made available. Your blood pressure during an argument, your cortisol spike before a presentation, your sleep patterns after a bereavement, your heart rate during a broadcast. This is not anonymized data. It is you, in your most vulnerable moments. The gaming industry pioneered the techniques that social media later adopted. Loot boxes, streaks, social pressure mechanics, time-limited offers. The language of addiction was built into game design long ago. 2 billion people are now inside those systems, and the systems are watching back. Voice data is uniquely revealing. Your tone reveals emotion, pattern reveals state. Every conversation near a connected device is a data input, classified, stored, used. The intimacy of voice made it the most powerful signal the system has ever collected. It is the sound of your life being turned into a training set. Targeting is leaving the screen and entering the physical world. Smart city infrastructure delivers personalized messaging based on who is standing in front. The public space is becoming a personalized information environment. There is no neutral space left in the targeting ecosystem. Virtual reality is the ultimate targeting environment. In VR, the system controls every element. Every sound, every sight, every interaction. There is no ambient noise from reality, no competing stimulus, no exit. The system becomes the entirety of your sensory experience. The architecture of desire is now the architecture of existence. Academics are now racing to build the ethical framework before it is too late. The question is not what can be done, but what should require consent. If a system changes your behavior without your knowledge, is that manipulation? In most legal systems, the answer remains, it depends on the terms of service. Awareness is spreading, slowly, unevenly, against significant resistance. Media literacy programs are teaching the next generation to interrogate the feed. Digital self-defense is becoming as necessary as physical safety awareness. But education moves at the speed of curriculum. The algorithm moves at the speed of light. Some institutions are pushing back with radical simplicity. No device policies, structured boredom, analog learning environments, restoration of cognitive conditions. The brain needs silence to consolidate memory. The system profits from eliminating it. We are rediscovering the value of the unmediated moment. The digital detox movement reveals something important about what we have lost. Participants report initial anxiety, then clarity, thoughts that had not surfaced in years. The feed was not filling time, it was filling space that used to belong to the self. Reclaiming that space is the first step toward freedom. Inside the companies, ethical voices exist and are regularly overruled. Documents reveal a pattern, concerns raised, then shelved. The mechanism to override is faster. Good intentions inside a bad incentive structure produce bad outcomes. Every time. The architecture is more powerful than the individuals within it. The leaked documents changed the public conversation permanently. Platforms knew. Internal research showed they chose commercial interest over well-being. Logic of a system. The revelation was not that corporations are evil. It is that the incentive is flawed. The moment of reckoning has arrived, but the system is still running. Europe moved first, and then the rest of the world is watching. DSA creates obligations. Transparency, algorithmic accountability, and user protection. Billions spent on compliance. Whether compliance produces meaningful change or theater remains to be seen. The rules are changing, but the architecture is adaptive. The international community is addressing neurotechnology governance. Constitutions are being updated. Chile became the first to enshrine neuro rights in its constitution. Others follow slowly. The technology will not wait for the legal framework to catch up. It never has. The boundary of the self is the next frontier of human rights. Civil society organizations are developing tools to audit what algorithms actually do. Independent research is filling the gap created by corporate non-disclosure. High stakes. Findings are routinely more concerning than the platforms acknowledge. Real evidence. Transparency is not given, it is extracted through persistent struggle. The global governance of neural targeting is not yet a coherent project. National responses vary. National responses, corporate pledges, and civil society demands. Each piece is real. But the architecture is not yet in place. Every year without it is a year of risk. The system operates without constraint while we debate the definitions. The science of the brain is advancing faster than our ethics. Breakthroughs every week. Researchers can now decode emotional intent from brain activity in real time. Surgical precision. Not with implants, with high-resolution, non-invasive scanning, the wall is coming down. The gap between reading the mind and targeting the mind has never been smaller. The roadmap is not secret. Corporations have published their visions, patents are filed, continuous ambient biometric monitoring, real-time emotional state inference. This is the plan. Predictive behavioral intervention is no longer science fiction. It is a roadmap. These are not plot points. They are quarterly deliverables for the masters of desire. The design goal is seamlessness, a targeting architecture so integrated you cannot feel it, where the system's suggestions feel identical to your own desires, perfectly matched. By that point, they will have been designed to be indistinguishable from you. The architecture of desire becomes the architecture of the soul. Resistance is not just political, it is phenomenological, to be fully present in a task. To resist the summary, the feed, the distillation, is to assert that experience is yours. Not all experience should be processed through the system. Some things resist optimization. Their value is inseparable from their inefficiency. Their value is human. Individual action has limits, but it is not meaningless. Understanding is foundation. Privacy settings, alternative platforms, chosen friction, these are acts of resistance. They do not solve the structural problem, but they are how you exit the default. Choosing the harder path is the only way to stay on your own path. The political response is forming around a single concept, cognitive liberty, the core right. The right to a mind free from non-consensual manipulation. It is the new struggle. It does not yet exist in international law, but every movement began this way. We are drafting the new Declaration of Independence for the digital age. The response to neural targeting is not technological. It is social, political, human. It requires the recovery of something we may not have noticed losing, our own desire. The capacity to want something truly freely, without the system's fingerprints on it. The architecture of desire was built to replace us. We must choose to remain. The architecture of desire was built over decades. It cannot be dismantled in a moment. But it was built by human decisions, and it can be rebuilt by them, starting now. The future is not a destination. It is a decision you make every time you look away. Reclaim your architecture, reclaim your desire, reclaim yourself. Right now, as you watch this, something is studying you back. Not a person, not a government, a system. And it has been learning your mind longer than you realize. This is the story of neural targeting, and how it already owns your attention. Right now, as you watch this, something is studying you back. Inside the world's most powerful tech campuses, a new science is being perfected. It combines neuroscience, behavioral data, and machine learning. The target is not your wallet, it's your nervous system. And the results are already reshaping human behavior at scale. Every tap, every pause, every scroll that lasts 2 seconds too long, all of it is collected, measured, and fed into a model of your mind. The model predicts what you'll do before you decide to do it. Welcome to the age of preemptive psychological engineering. The corporations building this technology call it personalization. Critics call it cognitive manipulation at industrial scale. The truth is somewhere far more disturbing than either label, because the line between influence and control has already been erased. What you are about to see is not science fiction. It is documented, patented, deployed. The only thing separating you from the experiment is whether you know you're in it. You are, and the experiment is far more complex than you can imagine. The science of neural targeting did not begin in Silicon Valley. It began in university neuroscience labs studying addiction and reward pathways. What researchers discovered about dopamine changed everything. And corporations were watching very closely. Dopamine is the brain's reward currency. It fires not when you receive something pleasurable, but when you anticipate it. The gap between craving and reward is where addiction is born. And it is the exact gap that every major platform is engineered to exploit. In 1971, psychologist B.F. Skinner proved that variable rewards create compulsion. Casinos built their empires on this principle. Silicon Valley studied it, then digitized it, then scaled it to billions. The smartphone feed is the most effective slot machine ever engineered. The data shows what most of us already feel. Screen time has doubled in a decade. Sleep is disrupted, attention is fractured. These are not side effects. They are the product. A mind that cannot rest is a mind that cannot resist. The patents tell a different story than the press releases. Inside thousands of documents filed with global patent offices lies a blueprint. A blueprint not for connection, but for emotional calibration at scale. Filed, approved, already running on your device. Internal research, leaked from multiple platforms, confirmed what critics suspected. Anger, outrage, and fear generate the highest engagement metrics. So the algorithm amplified them, deliberately, systematically. Not because anyone ordered it, because the machine learned it worked. By 2018, whistleblowers were surfacing with evidence, not of a conspiracy, but of an optimization process with no ethical ceiling. The machine had one instruction: maximize time on platform. And it found that destabilizing the human mind was the most efficient path. The hearings came, the testimony was careful, the apologies were polished, but the algorithms were not changed. Because changing them would reduce engagement, and engagement is the revenue. The system was working exactly as designed. The neurological evidence is now clear. Sustained high-frequency interruption of the prefrontal cortex degrades long-form thinking. In plain terms, the technology is restructuring how the human brain processes information, and the corporations building it have studied this data for years. Each year, the announcements grow bolder and the language more visionary. But beneath every sleek product launch is the exact same engine. The same drive to occupy more of your attention, more of your day, and more of your mind. And now, that engine has found a new and dangerous frontier. The arrival of large-scale artificial intelligence changed the trajectory of neural targeting forever. Suddenly, systems could model individual psychology with unprecedented precision. Not just what you clicked, but what you feared, what you desired, what you doubted. A digital twin of your inner world running silently on corporate servers. Suddenly, systems could model individual psychology with unprecedented precision. Your profile is not just your posts and your purchases. It includes your typing cadence, your scroll velocity, how long you hover before deciding. Aggregated, these microsignals are more revealing than any survey or interview. They tell the system what you will not tell yourself. The devices in your home are not passive. Every ambient signal, voice, light levels, movement patterns, feeds the behavioral model. Not always recorded, but always monitored, always learning. The home became a laboratory, and you became the subject. Neuromarketing is no longer an experimental discipline. It is a multi-billion-dollar industry. Firms now map which advertisements trigger the insular cortex, the seat of disgust and social pain. Then they craft campaigns designed to activate exactly those regions, creating emotions you did not choose and desires you cannot explain. The same tools built for selling products were sold to political campaigns. Psychographic profiles were used to deliver different realities to different voters. One group saw anger, another saw fear, a third saw hope, all engineered. Democracy was not hacked, it was A/B tested. Mental health data is the next major frontier for neural targeting. Apps that track mood, sleep, and anxiety collect the most intimate data set imaginable. When that data is monetized, and it is, the implications are profound. Your vulnerabilities become targeting parameters. Augmented reality will dissolve the last boundary between the digital and the physical. When the targeting layer is overlaid directly onto your perception of the world, the distinction between what you see and what you are shown disappears entirely. Neural targeting in the physical world, coming faster than anyone planned. The military applications of neural targeting are not theoretical. State-level actors have developed what defense analysts now call cognitive warfare. The goal is not to destroy infrastructure, but to destabilize belief systems. A population that cannot agree on reality cannot coordinate resistance. Disinformation is not random. It is algorithmically precision targeted. It finds the users whose psychological profile makes them most susceptible. It arrives at the moment of maximum cognitive vulnerability, delivered by a system that learns and improves with every share. There are people inside these systems trying to slow it down, ethicists, researchers, engineers who understand what they have built. But the economic incentives move faster than any internal review board. The machine does not wait for permission. surveillance infrastructure, and neural targeting are converging. The physical world is being annotated. Every face, every movement, every purchase. What was once the domain of authoritarian states is now standard corporate architecture. The difference between monitoring and control is narrowing to a single decision. Children are the most vulnerable and the most targeted segment. Their neural pathways are still forming, and the algorithms know it. Platforms designed with engagement mechanics known to exploit developing brains. The first generation raised inside the targeting system is now entering adulthood. Governments are beginning to legislate, but the technology moves at a speed laws cannot match. By the time a regulation is drafted, the system has already evolved past it. Lobbyists ensure that the most critical provisions are softened or removed. The regulatory gap is not a failure of governance, it is a feature of the system. The most significant escalation is still arriving. Brain-computer interfaces promise medical breakthroughs, and they will deliver them. But the same technology that restores movement to paralyzed patients can read emotional states, predict decisions, and influence cognition in real time. Bidirectional means not just reading but writing. Not just receiving signals from the brain, but sending them back. The corporations pursuing this technology are not fringe actors. They are among the most capitalized companies in human history. The deepest question is not technical, it is philosophical. If your desires are engineered, are they still yours? If your decisions are predicted before you make them, is that free will? These are not abstract puzzles. They are the defining questions of this moment. Intelligence agencies now classify neural targeting as a national security threat, not because of what corporations have done, but because of what adversaries can do with the same tools. The infrastructure of attention control is dual use by design. Built for commerce, deployable for control, a counter movement is forming. Researchers, activists, and former insiders are pushing a new framework, cognitive liberty, the right of the individual to sovereignty over their own mind. It does not yet exist in law, but the argument is growing louder. Resistance does not require rejection of all technology. It requires awareness, deliberate friction, chosen disconnection. The system profits from your unconsciousness. Attention, return to your own control, is the first act of refusal. The signal is everywhere, it moves through everything. But it requires your participation to complete the circuit. What you do with that knowledge, that is the one variable the algorithm cannot predict. Part 1 ends here. The deeper story is only beginning. The reckoning has begun, not with a single moment, but with a convergence. Regulators, researchers, technologists, and citizens arriving at the same conclusion from different directions. The system must change, and the momentum is irreversible. And this time, the pressure is coming from everywhere at once. Inside the companies, the internal reckoning has its own momentum. Regulators threatening structural intervention, advertisers demanding transparency, engineers refusing projects. The economic logic of the targeting system is being challenged from within. Not because the companies have changed, because the context around them has. The first landmark legal ruling on cognitive rights changes the landscape permanently. A court holds that targeting without informed consent is a rights violation. The precedent is contested, the appeals will take years. But the legal architecture has cracked open, and that cannot be undone. The technical work of rebuilding begins. It is harder than building the original system, because the original system was optimized for one objective. The new system must serve the user, not just the metric. Education has begun to catch up. Media literacy is no longer an elective. It is a survival skill. The generation that will inherit the system is learning to interrogate it. Not to destroy it, but to demand that it serve them. The future is in their hands. Regulatory infrastructure is being built, slowly, imperfectly, but in earnest. Agencies tasked with auditing algorithmic systems before deployment. Requirements for meaningful consent rather than buried permissions. The machinery of democratic accountability applied to the machinery of cognitive targeting. Alternatives to the existing architecture are being built. Open source platforms where the algorithm is public, audited by anyone, controlled by no one. Federated networks where data sovereignty rests with the user. The technology for an ethical information ecosystem already exists. Meaningful consent is technically possible. It requires granular controls, plain language, regular renewal, and a business model that does not depend on the user consenting to everything. That last requirement is the hard one, but companies that solve it will have a competitive advantage. The advertising industry is discovering that behavioral targeting has limits. Privacy regulations have reduced the data available. User resistance has grown. And research is showing that contextual advertising, ads matched to content rather than profiles, performs comparably. The economic case for the surveillance model is weaker than its proponents claimed. The neurotechnology sector is beginning to establish ethics norms before the technology deploys at scale. Neural data sovereignty agreements, prohibition on non-consensual emotional inference. The same mistakes made in digital targeting are being studied as the exact precedents to avoid. Whether the industry will hold to these norms under commercial pressure, that is the critical unknown. Well-being metrics are entering the governance conversation. Governments are beginning to measure the cognitive health of their populations. Platforms are being evaluated not just on economic contribution, but on population-level mental health outcomes. The language of the market is being extended to include the costs the market produces. The public health response is mobilizing. Cognitive hygiene is becoming a recognized component of general health. The brain, like the body, requires conditions to function well. And those conditions can be protected, supported, and restored. Democracy is organizing its own defense. Election regulators are developing specific rules for algorithmic political advertising, requirements for transparency, attribution, and limits on psychographic targeting in elections. The right to an unmanipulated vote is being extended to include the right to an unmanipulated mind. The academic infrastructure for a new field is being built: cognitive rights, neuroethics, algorithmic accountability. Students who will become the researchers, lawmakers, and engineers of the next system. The curriculum for resistance is being written. The first international accountability ruling arrives. Not a fine, a finding, a formal declaration that the system violated human rights. The mechanism for enforcement is still weak, but the precedent is established. Every subsequent case will stand on this foundation. The testimony of former insiders changes the legal record permanently. Names, dates, internal emails, decisions made in full knowledge of the consequences. The record is now public. The accountability is now formal. History will be able to say they knew. Change does not only happen at the level of international law and corporate policy. Communities are negotiating their own relationships with the targeting system. Local covenants, community data trusts, collective opt-outs. The political imagination is expanding, and the smallest scale is where it is most vivid. The next generation is not waiting for permission. Across every continent, young technologists are building the alternatives. Platforms where the algorithm is transparent, networks where data belongs to the user. The technical knowledge exists. The will is growing. The question is whether the incentives will follow. Digital inclusion must now include cognitive protection. Connectivity without literacy is exposure without defense. The communities being connected last must not inherit the unregulated version of the system. The right to be online must include the right to understand what being online means. Certification systems are emerging for cognitive safety. Products that meet standards for data minimization and genuine consent carry a mark. Consumers can see it, regulators can enforce it, companies compete to earn it. The market for trust is growing because the cost of its absence is becoming visible. Mental health organizations have formally connected the technology to the crisis. The algorithmic amplification of anxiety, depression, and isolation, documented and named. The response must be structural as well as clinical. Treatment without addressing the environmental determinant is a partial response. Some companies are choosing differently, not because they are forced to, but because the founders decided what kind of company they wanted to build. Privacy by default, transparency by design, user empowerment as a product feature. These companies are still rare, but they are proving the model is viable. Art is doing what policy cannot, making the invisible visible, making the abstract personal, making the technical human. When you see your behavioral profile rendered in light and sound, the abstraction dissolves. And what remains is the recognition. This is you, as seen by a system that does not know you. The scientific community has reached consensus, not on every detail, but on the central finding. Sustained exposure to algorithmic targeting systems alters cognitive function. The question is no longer whether, the question is what we will do about it. The framework is not perfect. Nothing built by committees and contested by adversaries ever is. But it exists, and existence, even imperfect, is the foundation of change. The argument that nothing could be done has been answered, but it exists, and it marks a fundamental shift in the landscape of cognitive rights. Engineers are learning to ask a different question. Not only does this feature increase engagement, but what does this feature do to the user's mind? The cognitive impact assessment is not yet standard practice, but every company that makes it standard changes what standard means. The educated mind is the hardest mind to target. Not because knowledge makes us immune, but because it makes us aware. Aware of the mechanism, aware of the intention, aware of the gap between the system's goals and our own. Awareness is the first freedom. It is also the most fragile. The most powerful acts of resistance are not political. They are personal. The decision to create space in your own life where the system does not reach. Not a permanent rejection, but a chosen pause. A reassertion of the self. Every moment reclaimed from the feed is a moment returned to the life you are actually living. The people who fought this fight are not famous. Most of them worked in relative obscurity, against significant pressure for years. They are researchers who published when publication was inconvenient, activists who were dismissed until the evidence was undeniable, engineers who refused. Every landmark in this story was preceded by a story. A piece of journalism that forced a reckoning, a document that should not have existed and could not be ignored once it did. Accountability journalism is not dead. It is the reason we know what we know. The future is not determined. It is being decided in thousands of small choices every day, by engineers who ask different questions, by regulators who hold the line, by parents who create different defaults, and by individuals who choose again and again to be present in their own lives. The same science that built the targeting machine can build something different. Behavioral insight applied to well-being, persuasive design applied to pro-social goals. The knowledge is not the problem. The direction it was pointed was the problem. And direction is the one thing that human beings, unlike machines, can change. The movement is no longer small. In 50 cities on one day, people who have never met each other arrive at the same place, carrying the same recognition that something was taken from them, quietly, incrementally, by design, and that they are entitled to take it back. Neural targeting is not the end of human autonomy. It is a test of it, a test of whether the species that built the system can choose to rebuild it on different terms. The verdict is not in. That is why this moment is not the end of the story. You came into this story with your attention, the most valuable thing in the world, to the systems we built. The question the story leaves you with is not political. It is personal. What do you choose to do with it now?